Hello, everyone, and welcome to this latest live episode of VOX VOMITUS. I am your host, Jennifer Ann Gordon, the author of Pretty Ugly, From Daylight to Madness, When the Sleeping Dead Still Talk, and The Japanese Box, and Other Stories. Joining me today, as always, is my VOX VOMITUS vixen, Allison Martine Hubbard, author of the Bourbon books, which includes Dibs in September, Move On Melinda, Climb the Salmon Ladder, and Ranchers Take Manhattan. Thank you. I'm like, thank you for being here. And thank you for I always love to watch you while I'm rattling off all your titles because you're like, you can do it in one breath. And
I'm just waiting for you to grab the inhaler. And one of these, I never point out that the full title of the last book is The Ranchers Take Manhattan because it is completely just The Muppets Take Manhattan, but with me not allowed to actually say Muppets because legally I'm but close enough.
And plus legally your characters are not Muppets. But joining us today is one of our very favorite guests. This is her fourth time on the show. I think 4 is our record. We haven't had a 5-timer yet, but we do have a core group of people who have been here 4 times. Amber Garza is back. We are very excited. Her book came out yesterday.
Happy birthday!
It is also happy book birthday. It's also her very first horror novel called Better to Eat You With. I don't have it because I read the ebook.
Yeah, we both have the E.
I have
imagine.
You have the poster back there, which, well, I'm seeing A Mother Would Know, but I think the Better to Eat You With is below it, maybe.
Yeah.
We'd have to zoom like this.
And I don't have my glasses on. I'll never see it. Amber, welcome back to VOX VOMITUS. For those people who haven't seen your 3 previous episodes of VOX VOMITUS, tell our viewers and our listeners a little bit about you, and then a little bit about your first horror novel, Better to Eat You With.
So hi, I'm Amber Garza. So my last 4 books are thrillers. I had When I Was You, A Mother Would Know, Where I Left Her, and In a Quiet Town. So I've been a thriller author for a little while. But after writing my last thriller, I decided I wanted to pivot into something else. And because I guess I have a dark mind, I didn't want to pivot into something cheery. So I went into
Yeah, like you went even darker than thriller.
Yeah. So back when I was a new mom, my kids are now 22 and 25, but back when I was a new mom, I remember being in the state of like, no sleep, no eating, no self-care, like you're wasting away. You feel like you're nothing except a mom, a conduit to this child. And my child was quite literally sucking the life out of me. And I remember thinking about when I was a child and my parents would read me The Giving Tree and how I always found that.
Which is a horror novel also, we just say.
I found it to be so disturbing. Even as a child, I'm like, this is so sad, this poor tree. Why does this kid keep taking everything from this poor tree? But when I was a new mom, I'm like, I am that tree. Like, right? Like, I just keep giving and giving when I don't have anything left, but I'm giving and giving to this child. And so I had written down in a notebook, like back then, 20 whatever years ago, I just wrote down like Giving Tree, Mother, horror novel, right?
Done.
And I never thought, I
just got chills. It's like, done.
Yeah, isn't that weird? And so then when I was like trying to think, what do I want to write now? That came to mind. I was like, remember when I had that idea? So then I started drafting it, and then that's how I came up with Better to Eat You With.
Okay, and
do
Amber,
you still have that notebook, that original notebook with the...
I don't think I do. I just kind of like, I don't want to say that I have a photographic memory, but once I write something down, it's like always in my brain that day that I wrote it, if that makes sense. And so I just was more recalling, like I was trying to think, what is an idea that I've had in the past? I never actually found the notebook, but I could picture myself writing. I could even picture what the notebook looked like. And I pictured myself writing that one little note, and I was like, oh, I could do that now.
Well, and I do want to say that first off, The Giving Tree is horrific and it is a horror novel. And I've heard talk about people saying it's going to have a new ending. And I'm just like, why would you do that? The book is horrific as it is. Leave it as it is. That's what Shell wanted us to know. But let me just say, we had already agreed to have you on the show, and I would have read anything you wrote anyway. But after reading this book, I had started reading before Jennifer did, and I'm like texting her going, I am already so triggered because
I know. I forgot to circle back to you because you were like, I don't want to tell you what I'm triggered by. And then But then I was reading it and I got very triggered by something. But I like that because I'm a horror person. So I'm like, I want it to be
Trigger me!
emotionally disturbing for me. So I will say, and this happens early, so it's not a spoiler.
No.
And it was an emotional trigger when your brand new mom said, like, talks about how she didn't want to become a mom because her family is cursed because every woman in her family dies at an early age. I was like, oh, yeah, I was like, uh-oh, that's what Allison was triggered by. That's what I'm triggered by. I was like, oh.
Well,
and I'm sorry.
And
no,
Amber,
it's okay. I liked it.
My props, and I might just post this later just for giggles and stuff. Is so okay. Well, I do have one because they're probably everywhere. A box of the new strips biotin have been taking because my hair is falling out like there is nobody's business, and I haven't just recently had kids. My youngest is 9. There is no reason for this right now.
Perimenopause.
I know. And my dermatologist who I've gone to, who talks about the fun new barnacles growing on me like I'm an old ship. Thank you very much, Dr. Goodwardane. We were talking about that and all these, as I just call them, my new snake oil that I'm trying. And she's like, none of that is going to help. If you need minoxidil, we'll do that. Your hair loss doesn't look substantial. It doesn't appear to be caused by this, that, or the other thing, which is great. I'm just like, but what about all the products I bought? Because and that's all I get now is all these things for the hair loss vitamins and supplements and sprays and the shampoos and and like the first thing is like, your main character Evie is losing hair and she's coughing up hair, and I'm like, oh my god, can I even read this? And of course I did, but still I was just like, and then the mother, like the mother, and Jennifer knows this because sometimes people are like, not that I'm Hamilton, but it's like, why are you always right, like you're running out of time? I'm like, well, because this is the history of the women in my family. My grandmother died when I was quite young, and my mother died the day before my child was born. So I'm like, I have about 10 years left. That's all I got. Now that's younger, like your characters, it happens even younger, like when the babies are babies. But I'm like, were you just looking for my neuroses and writing to them?
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry about that.
Nobody would have known any of that. It's not like I go posting that, but now everybody knows. So thank you, internet.
Oh, well, I didn't mean to trigger you in that way.
But you know what though? Those are so they're common. I'm not the only okay. The hair loss thing is like it's $1 billion industry at this point because we're all like, but our locks, what is happening to them? And you know, I'm looking at your beautiful blonde hair, and my stylist is like, we are not going blonde until your hair loss issue is addressed because it's too hard on your hair. And I'm like, I don't want to be blonde again anyway.
I just don't want to be bald.
That was mostly it. Yeah.
So, Amber, I love the original inspiration for this came 20 years ago. Did the symptoms sort of, because a lot of them are like perimenopausal symptoms, the brain fog, the hair loss, the doctors saying, oh, you're fine. You're fine. It's just this. Were you re-inspired by, because I think we're all of the same age bracket.
Yeah, I think we're all exactly the same age.
I think so.
Yeah. So were you getting some of this going like, why is this happening again? My children are way too old. Oh, this is all just me. Thanks.
I think it's why it was easy to write now. Because I mean, I was writing about being a new mom, but I haven't been a new mom forever. Although that memory never leaves.
No.
But I do feel like, yes, I'm experiencing, I mean, very identical symptoms to what you experience when you're pregnant and when you're a new mom, when you're going through perimenopause. I am not in control of my body right now at all. So like, I don't know what's happening. Every day it's a new horror. And so, yes.
Weird smells. You're like, am I having a stroke? Is this?
Perimenopause is body horror, just like in and of itself. And it's your own, and you have no control over it. And you're like, is it hot? Am I
having a hot flash, or am I possessed by a demon?
Yeah, it's like,
what is happening? But I feel like it was easier for me to write about being a new mom than it was for me to write about perimenopause. Like I sometimes think it is easier to write about a season when you're not in it.
Yes.
That makes sense. And so for me, I was experiencing similar things, but it was easy to think of it in terms of like, it's Evie going through this. Like it's not my, like if I wrote a horror novel about perimenopause, I feel like it would be too close.
Yeah. Oh no. You also need to have that. I think that the distance helps in that you can not just remember what it was like in the time, but have that distance to look back on it and go, this is how people might be perceiving me, because that's part of what's going through Evie's mind is like, people are going to think I'm nuts. And then one of the characters she meets right away is someone who's going through something similar, which is like, on one hand, affirming, but on the other hand, like, oh shit, this isn't good.
Right. And that feeling of a new mom, like the loneliness, you feel that a lot, right? Like you feel like you're the only one going through it, but then other moms are going through it. And once you do start talking to other moms, that's what helps you, right?
Yes.
Like the people in your life, like your husband and like the people, they don't get it. But then you meet another mom and you're like, oh, I'm not crazy. But at first when you meet other moms, they don't want to talk about it. So it takes that like time. So I was trying to show that too, that like isolation and then the trying hard to be vulnerable with people. But then once you are, then that's you through it, right?
Well, and I'll just say, like, I will forever be mad at MOPS. I don't know if you guys know what MOPS is. It's Mothers of Preschoolers. And the only reason I'm mad is that the name is kind of a misnomer because it's really for anyone with like a mom to be up to you have a kid in kindergarten and then they boot you out, or not the first one. But if you don't have a kid in kindergarten, and I do have people who we joked were on the perpetual MOPS plan, so they would just keep having babies so they could stay in MOPS because of the breakfast or something. I mean, funeral potatoes, everybody loves that. But I didn't know, even though my church had a MOPS, I didn't know I could go to it because I didn't have a preschooler. And I literally spent like the first 6 or 7 months of my daughter's life on the couch by myself, feeling super, super isolated because this child wouldn't sleep unless I was holding her. And I just lived there 24/7. And it was unpleasant. And then I finally joined MOPS like second semester. She was a bit older after someone reached out and said, you should join MOPS. I'm like, this is a baby. This is not a preschooler. And like, but it's for anyone under that. I'm like, they should really rename it. But then it would be MOBs, Mothers of Babies. And that's maybe they thought that was too intimidating.
I mean, I don't know.
I think I like that more.
But I kind of, after that, kind of made it my personal mission to let anybody I know who is expecting know that, hey, you should join MOPS even now, because then you can get set up for the meal train, which really, I didn't get the meal train the first time. The only thing I got was leftover funeral food that people had given to my dad, sending it over my way. Like, here, have some chili. And I really could have used it with that first baby who lived on me.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I was a really young mom. So I was 20 when I had my son. And so all my friends were still partying.
Yeah, they're like, Amber, what are you doing? You're like,
you're not going with us on this overnight bender, so mine, I didn't want to join. Like, I know,
like, I have to keep this human alive
because I'm like, I don't want to hang out with these 30-year-old. Now in my late 40s, I'm like, 30 is so young. But at the time, I was like, I don't want to hang out with a bunch of 30-year-olds.
Old people. Yeah.
So it was isolating for me because I'm watching all my friends do these fun stuff, and then the people who are inviting me to stuff, I'm like, these people are old.
They're grandmas. And they're like, honey, the gray hair all came with the child. I'm not any older than you. Yeah. And that's absolutely true. And I know that when I was doing MOPS, which could have been MOBs, I was in charge of doing the newsletter one year, and I just about like spit out my coffee because the girl who sits next to me at the table, her birthday was one day before me and 10 years earlier or later. So she was like 10 years younger than me. And I'm like, well, no wonder you look so rested, because your body is still designed to do all-nighters.
It just still has its own natural collagen forming. Yeah. You don't have to smear butter on your face at night.
Butter. Yeah, or colostrum, because that's probably good. But I felt like I was an old mom because most of my friends who were going to have kids had by then. But I'd gone through a divorce and then remarried. I'm like, I'm the old lady. And then I found out I really wasn't much older. I was close in age to a lot. But it does kind of throw you where you're like, if you feel like you're too young or you're too old and you don't want to be with them, and then you're like, I'm with nobody. This is so fun.
Yeah, and it's isolating.
Yes. Which is a great place to start horror, because the isolation is
like up here rather than to start horror.
Yeah.
So Amber, because we know you so much as like a thriller author, we know you're obviously a thriller fan. Are you a lifelong horror fan? Are you just newer to the genre? Do you read it? Do you have a favorite trope?
Do you eat it?
It's funny. I mean, I have over the years like dabbled in horror. I'll say my mom was always like, Stephen King is her favorite author of all time. And so anytime a Stephen King came out with a new book, she had it. So as a kid, I would read her, like, not as a kid, like as a teenager, like when I would go
we all read it too young.
Except for me, because my sister had to like drag me kicking and screaming even to read The Stand, which isn't even horror, but that's
well, I would dabble in it. Like, I would go through her books, and she read a lot of mystery novels. So I would read her mystery novels, but I would sometimes read the Stephen King novel. And so that was kind of my only foray into horror. Although I will say, growing up, so we had all those, like, it wasn't Goosebumps, but it was, I can't remember what. Well, anyway, like, I Know What You Did Last Summer. We would have all those different ones. My kids did the Goosebumps, but so I would read those kinds of books, which I don't necessarily think they're horror, but at the
they're
time,
like a gateway drug, because I remember
Right.
being like 10 or 11, reading like Christopher Pike and
Yes.
Lois Duncan, who did write that
Yes,
I Know
there
What
you
You
go.
Did Last Summer. And even sometimes like the Babysitters Club and Sweet Valley High would have like a mystery, like where you're like, ooh, it's the Halloween book.
Was
Yeah.
Christy secretly a slasher and I missed that? Because I don't remember that.
I remembered like yeah, exactly. Even Babysitters Club, yeah, they would have the Halloween ones. So I would do that. And I've always liked like the slasher movies. I haven't always liked like supernatural horror movies, but I love like any slasher, any like campy, horror.
Yep.
But then about like 5 or 6 years ago or something, I kind of was getting like tired of the same thing. And so I started to, a lot of the bookstagrammers that I follow would read sometimes horror. So I started dabbling in some horror and I was finding some really good ones. And then I really, in the last couple years, have really started to like I loved Mother Thing. I liked Night Bitch. So that was like, when I started reading those ones, I was like, oh, I love how, or even like Nat Cassidy's Mary, like,
oh, I love
different
Mary.
books that really like, I don't know, they just felt like they spoke to me, I guess. And so then I started getting into them and starting to read a lot. And that was, so this was maybe 3 years ago, I guess. And that was really when this idea came back to me, because I thought, I just love how these books, they're scary in a way, but they're more like psychologically creepy, right? Like they're really just speaking to me about what I'm going through, and they feel like they're saying something very profound in them, right? So I don't know, that's what really had me gravitate back to it. And now I've been listening, I listen to a lot of audiobooks, so now I've been listening to a ton of them.
And if you listen to the Mary audiobook, that is like
that's the one I listen to. Yeah.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
okay.
If you liked that, I can't remember the author, but The September House.
Oh, I listened to that. That was so good. And
Yeah,
the
I haven't read that
was
one.
fabulous.
Okay, I got to put that on my list too. Because Amber, like you, I am a late in life horror convert. I was always fantasy sci-fi. I mostly just blame Jennifer for dragging me along. But she was completing the work of my sister, who had been trying to get me to read it for years, and I'm like, it's too scary. And either the fact that as now I've grown up, I am just numb to all the horrors of life, having experienced them, that nothing really scares me anymore. But I enjoy some of the suspense, or I enjoy the creepiness, and that there is such that, like you were saying, the different kinds of horror, that variety of horror, that there are still kinds that I'm not super into, and others that I'm like, oh yes, tell me more about this cursed place. I would like to know about the gothic cursed place. That I'm all here for. And anything Mike Flanagan touches is gold. I mean, it's rotting gold, and there's like moths, and they're probably possessed, but I want it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer.
And I do agree with you too, like listening to the audiobooks, the narrators can really make it, because like that September House was so great. Mary was so great. The other one was The House of Good Bones. And
I haven't read it yet.
That's Kingfisher. Yes, Kingfisher. Because
I have the paper book. Another good, and I'm going to say in the same vibes, the same vein of September House, Mary, your book, Night Bitch, Mother Thing, is Diavola.
Oh, I haven't read that one yet.
I've seen that, but I haven't read it yet.
Oh, it is about a woman in her 30s, so just a couple years younger than us, but she goes on a vacation to Italy with her entire family. So they're like staying at the world's worst Airbnb. So it's really a great, like, just again, the female experience when, and the audio for that is Chef's Kiss.
Okay, and this is only semi-related, but my eldest daughter has certainly recently really gotten into like mystery style movies, things in the vein of Agatha Christie, and she really loved Knives Out. And there's only 2 of the Knives Out movies, so we kind of ran out of those quickly. And we recently saw one that was in Italian, but we'll do the dubs. I mean, we'll do the subs, not the dubs. That was called something like 7 women, 1 murder or something like that. And it was a locked room mystery kind of thing, but it was 7 women, mostly all in the same family and in Italian. And you just made me think of that. And I highly recommend it, mostly because it's hilarious, but also, I mean, it's not meant to be tongue in cheek, but it was a gorgeous family drama with a dead body when the one guy involved in the family is dead. And it's like, oh, great, the one guy here is dead. And everybody's like, who did this? And who's my daughter? You're like, who cares? It's fine.
I'm not depressed about that.
But I enjoyed it. And who knew that I was going to enjoy an Italian horror / I mean, it was more of like a whodunit thriller, Agatha Christie, because there wasn't very gory or anything like that. But
I feel like mysteries and
it.
thrillers and crime novels and horror are all just cousins.
They are.
So Amber, do you think your past 4 thrillers, how did writing those affect how you wrote a horror novel? Did you come to it in the same way? You did have those like quick snappy chapters like a thriller does, so that's why I was like, this is reading like a thriller.
It's fast. Yeah
Well, yeah, and I think even like the mystery, the overarching mystery of it, like it felt just almost to me like kind of a more gory supernatural kind of thriller.
Don't say.
Yeah. It was definitely a thriller with a lot of body horror.
Yes. And I think it was so fun for me because I'm so used to, I guess I should start by this. So one of the things that if I do run across a bad review or if someone tags me in it, which don't do that, but people do.
Don't do that.
Sometimes it'll be like, oh, I really had to suspend disbelief. And I know there was one of my books. And I know that's something that I struggle with is like how much to make this reality and how much is like you just know it's fiction. And when you're writing straight thrillers, you do have to toe that line perfectly or people get upset because it's supposed to feel like real life. This felt fun because I was like, I can just play because you have to suspend disbelief the entire time in order to read this book. Like there's nothing in it that's going to be like
physically this book could not happen.
This did not was not inspired by anything that actually happened other than maybe some of the hair loss. Yeah. Well, and I think
that's the things I could kind of just let my imagination go wild, and it was so fun. Like I just really enjoyed that aspect. Like I knew I needed to make the mystery make sense within the world, but I didn't have to worry about it making sense within our world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
exactly. That's the best part about horror. And I feel like in horror and speculative fiction, sci-fi, as long as your character is believable and your character is making believable choices, it doesn't matter how screwed up and bonkers.
Right.
Exactly. Because I think I completely agree. That's why people who can't see what I'm doing over here, like I'm an Italian pantomime, is like doing the pointing the nose, like you nailed it, a nose on the on the nose there. Because for me, I start losing investment in a story of any genre if the people aren't acting like people. It can be any genre, but the people need to make realistic choices. And I never would tag an author in a bad review. And in fact, I didn't even review one of my least favorite books of all time, but it was a book where the main character was just not making choices. Like nobody who this happens would then behave this way. And that's part of the thing is there's like a variety of allowable responses, and you get more wiggle room when you have things like somebody's going through a really tough time or they're separated from their support system or whatever, that they may not act the way that they would in the best circumstances. And you do that with Evie, so she's there she's back in her hometown to see her dad, who's now on hospice. And so she doesn't have her like normal support system, or she's not with her husband who's off doing lawyer stuff. And so she has to, and she's not in her normal situation either. Like one of the first things that freaks her out is a cat of all things. Is like, oh, that's a cat. I didn't know my dad had a cat. Hi, Stan. But that kind of thing. And when you get into that kind of place, you can give a little bit more of, well, she hasn't got enough sleep. She's stressed. And so some of her choices, you have a little bit more wiggle room, but her choices still do make sense, which I really appreciate, as opposed to like, well, I'm just going to walk away from that and go, yeah. I've read books like that. Yeah, and I think most people are the same way. So you shouldn't be getting any reviews saying that here, because I feel like all of the characters, even ones where you're like, really, you're going to do that? There's reasons why they're doing it, and it's not like
she felt real, because I feel like we've all been in that situation where, and sometimes it happens so fast, like you're without your support system for like even 24 hours. And that's like, this is why girl dinner, quote unquote, exists. Because it's like, without supervision, we're just eating Cheese Whiz and like a spoon of peanut butter. It's like You start making bad decisions quick, where it's like,
Very true.
I'm going to drink this whole bottle of wine
Mhm,
and just have
mhm,
peanut butter for dinner.
mhm.
So raise the stakes $1 billion.
Yeah.
And
Right.
there you have your main character who's like, if her husband was there with her, he'd be like, whoa,
Right.
Yeah.
we've got to get you to a dentist.
Right.
Start with that.
And exactly, because like I think most women can probably or relate to going to the doctor and being told you're fine when you're having symptoms that aren't fine. And I think it's believable that we at some point are like, I'm sure I'm fine. It's just this. We're rationalizing
Yes.
why it's happening.
Mhm.
And I've had a lot of health scares where the doctors didn't believe me and then it ended up being something. And again, to your point, like my husband is the one that can like talk it through with me and be like, we need to go back to the doctor, or you need to call again, or ask for this test. Quit Googling.
Quit Googling.
I know. Get off
Google.
WebMD.
Googling, let's call the doctor again.
It's not a family curse.
Right. But if I'm alone, I spin and I'm dying and I'm all these things.
Oh, absolutely.
Then I also will not do anything. I will go into like hibernation mode because I'm like, no one's gonna believe me. It's probably nothing, or I'm dying, and I'll just do it.
Exactly. It's like if I'm actually dying, I'm clearly like WebMD said I'm dying tomorrow. I'm dying in 3 months. Why should I waste this time going to the doctor?
Yeah, it's too late, you know.
When I can go to Odds and Ends, the witchcraft
Just
shop.
for them to give me the runaround, I'll just laugh. Like I've said that before to my husband. Oh well, I'm probably dying. I'm just gonna die. And then he's like, "What are you talking about?" But I'm like, you don't know what it's like to be a woman and go to the doctor with weird symptoms that don't match. You know, whatever they're wanting.
When your labs are fine.
Yeah.
Right.
Or they didn't run the right labs that would have shown it anyway. So that's super helpful. Or the labs, well, this could be by any of these other things. And Jennifer, I just need to point out real quick that wine plus peanut butter is basically just peanut butter and jelly, and that's a healthy choice. So I
a healthy choice.
Especially
without that pesky bread.
No, because that's carbs, and everybody hates carbs now. I'm pretty sure that those
practically a diet food.
It is. It's keto friendly, maybe. Not quite. And I do feel like, especially when you also have, she is back to peanut butter and jelly. She is sandwich here because she's got the father responsibilities and the baby responsibilities, and that is super relatable when you've got the whole like you've got people who are being asked to be responsible for your own self, somebody else, and yours then gets deprioritized down to zero. And I know that I've often felt that way because there's like, well, where's there time for me to do any of this? Because I got to take care of this and I got to take care of this. And these people can't. So I'll be all right. And if I'm not, well, too bad.
Right.
And that's basically how it ends up happening.
Right. Yeah. And I think I liked too, the like looking at her relationship with her dad and then her relationship with her daughter and just kind of that dichotomy of that, you know, like I really liked writing that, like watching her try to care for her daughter who was harming her in her mind, especially once she knows, you know, and then her dad who is harming her in a different way and her trying to figure out how to love both and be good for both and care for both and then keep herself sane. Like she was in an impossible situation and that part did feel like a thriller because, you know, you put them in situations where they're not sure if it's in their mind or it's so that part of thriller writing I think helped me with that, like trying to toe that line for her.
And I feel like that's kind of my favorite trope in thriller and in horror, where it's am I crazy,
right,
or is everybody out to get me, or you know, in this case, eat me, maybe consume me.
Right.
So are you going to stay in the horror world for a little while, or are you, because I know like your world is opened up. You just did a horror novel. I believe in the past you've done romance novels.
I was going to say, like when you originally were doing like the rom-com type stuff or romance, any interest in coming back to the hot tub with me?
I did write, like, I don't know if I would call it a romance, but I wrote like a woman's fiction. So kind of like, it does have romantic elements, but I don't know. It would be a rom-com would be the closest way to call it. But the romance is not the main thing. Her just finding herself is the main thing. But I did write that a couple years ago, and I'm deciding what to do with that one. So that may be coming to you soon.
Send it to me.
Yeah, I should.
Let's do it. Send it to me.
But right now I'm actually working on, I guess it's a thriller, but it's more, Yeah, I guess it would be a thriller, but it kind of will read a little bit more dark and more horror-ish than my other thrillers. So maybe this foray into horror made my thrillers different. I don't know. It's different than my other thrillers, but I'm working on a thriller right now.
Well, and I feel like there's like there's a spectrum there, and like you could probably line up all your books like on the darkness scale of like, okay, this one is actually horror where there's some really nasty things happening, and this one's a dark thriller, and then those were thrillers, and you probably arranged them in order of how screwed up all of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Yeah.
Where do we go?
And it's always good to have a book that kind of like can live in both worlds, because then you can, you know, just to be businessy for like 2 seconds, because nobody really wants to talk about the business right now, is that it can be shopped in 2 different markets to 2 different types of people. So it's like, oh, you like thrillers? It's this. Oh, you like horror? It's you know,
it's still
a non-supernatural horror novel. You know, it's
what do we call that? The we call that the secular horror.
Secular horror.
Because the idea of like normally horror falls into the speculative nature, and all of that is like, okay, we're dealing with things that can't happen in reality, but there are definitely horror. Like when you've got most slasher stuff could happen. We still call it horror, even though it's like there's no supernatural element. It's just, hey, people can be awful and murdery. So, you know, there you go.
And like home invasion stuff and stalker stuff. I mean, honestly, I find I very rarely get scared when I'm reading horror, but when I read a good thriller, that freaks me out, because I'm like, that could happen.
That could happen.
Yeah. Well, thriller, my one that I'm working on is kind of, it starts with like maybe a home invasion. I'm really into that right now. I'm really into the like break-in, something happening in your home. And then it delves into the psychological part of like, did this really happen? What she thinks happened. So,
I love that.
So yeah, that's why it delves into some horror aspect, but I'm really liking it because that's kind of where I'm at right now. I like you. I love the trope where you're not sure what's real. And then I'm loving the like break-in home invasion trope right now. So I kind of took both of those and put them into one book.
Well, so. I can't wait for that. So Amber, your book is available everywhere.
Yes.
It came out yesterday.
Yeah. I think in some channels it hasn't gone up yet, because I was rushing that, but it should be.
Like, oh, that's right. Yeah, because you were dealing with some like weird website stuff. So people, I've heard your socials falling down below as opposed to your website. So hopefully that will be up later. But for now, find her on social.
And everybody should make sure to follow Amber on her socials, because your TikTok is great. Your Instagram is great. Every time I see you, I'm like, oh, you really like, and I've said this before, you just take the time to make things interesting for your followers. You're great at teasing your books and making videos. So I love that. So people watching this live or on the replay, follow Amber. Like, it's really good. So Amber, thank you so much for being here today. The time flew by crazy fast. I read your book in like a day and a half. So so thank you, and thank you for stepping into the horror world. And we can't take fourth time. So next time you're going to get one of those jackets that they get on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, the Five Timers
Club. Yeah.
Do we have jackets?
It's going to be like a picture of a jacket.
Oh, it's picture jacket. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, like a paper doll type of thing. We could probably figure out how to do that. It's a paper jacket. It's a printout of a jacket.
The Voxies are gymnastic trolleys that Kelly Hitchcock steals from her children. So I mean, it's all good. That's what we here.
Thank you so much, Amber.
Thank you, Amber.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.